The following is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network.
Welcome to Wilfred Watches podcast this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are hanging out, listening to the show. Wanted to say hello. Thank you all for joining. We've got the YouTube live stream going today, so if you're listening to this live, feel free to chat along with us and say hello. I have a very special guest this morning, this afternoon. He is the amazing artist from Eggshells book. He is chronicling the history of Japanese pro wrestling through art. He is the brother of Chris Charlton. You'll know him from the Chris, of course, from the commentary table at New Japan, which is an amazing gig for him. Very happy for him. We have today Matt Charlton joining. How you doing, Matt?
Hey, I'm very well, thank you, and thank you for having me back. I appreciate that.
Oh man, I really got some awesome feedback last time you were here. I got to ask you some really kind of curveball questions last time, so I thought this time we'll invite you back for some easier questions and just a friendly chat. So nothing too groundbreaking today, but so yeah, thanks for joining, man.
No, pleasure.
And a huge thanks to you, man, for sketching my face, which was pretty remarkable. I remember I saw you do Chris's sketch a few weeks back, and then I saw mine's come up on my timeline, and I was just dumbfounded.
Wow.
So just absolute honor. Thank you for that.
I'm glad you liked it, and it's always a bit of a worry when you're doing somebody that you know or you have contact with, and so yeah, I'm glad you liked it.
Absolutely, man. I was really, really happy with that. Real quick, I want to give some hashtag markout mentions before we get going to the Patreon supporters. I created a Patreon page to give some extra content and posts to some of the listeners who are willing to pledge and support me a little bit further than most. And I want to say thanks to Anthony from Smart to Death, John, Courtney, and Archie. Thanks so much for jumping on the bandwagon. We have lots of cool things coming up in 2019, so thanks, guys. Also, shout out to Social Suplex Podcast Network, which I am now part of, with the likes of Keeping It Strong Style, One Nation Radio, and my buddy Omega Luke podcast. So you can find me on Social Suplex Podcast Network. Thank you, guys. Really, really good reception so far, so I appreciate it. All right, so let's get into the chat with Matt today. We spoke about your history, your journey coming with chronicling the history of Japanese pro wrestling. How is your journey going?
It never ends. But I got some really good news over the last couple of days, and so 2019 we'll be looking for a book to be coming out. Towards the end of 2019. I mentioned before, the idea for me would just be, or the perfect thing for me would just be produce a illustrated encyclopedia of everyone ever, and it's not quite that, but it's about as close as you can get to that, and have it fit on bookshelves. So no, I'm really excited at the moment. So no, things are looking really good, and it's. You've always got to have goals, and you've always got to have aims, and so this has given me something tangible and physical to work towards for the next year. So no, it's going well.
Are you planning on having like a print with this, or is this mostly just artwork, or will there be some scripture in there as well?
No, there's a frustratingly large amount of text.
Okay.
Right. But I'm enjoying that as well. I'm enjoying the whole thing. So no, like I say, it's work, and it's a big project, but it's fun, and it's what I want to be doing. So, yeah.
So there's been a lot of chat lately with guys and girls being exclusive to a brand, particularly Walter, Pete Dunne, and all those guys from the UK. Where you're originally from, of course. There's a lot of fret at first with the impending Vince arms coming through the island and taking all their good talents. Do you think that the UK indie scene is going to be prospering just fine, or do you think that WWE is trying to kind of take over, or is this kind of a natural progression of a hot scene? What do you think?
Because I come from, or I started learning how to wrestle or getting into wrestling where the indie scene didn't really exist. It wasn't cool, at least. I mean, there's always been wrestling and independent wrestling in the UK. It's always been there.
And it wasn't great for a long period of time, too.
Oh, no.
Very good.
Because the perception of what pro wrestling was had changed so dramatically, and so there were these horrible dark days of the mid '90s, the late '90s, where you'd get somebody wearing a Power Ranger costume or a Kane mask, or there were just far too many WWE tribute shows as opposed to the traditional British wrestling style, and they hadn't quite figured out a way of making that popular. It certainly wasn't fashionable. It certainly wasn't what people considered to be pro wrestling. But wrestlers didn't go away. You still had good wrestlers. You still had people teaching others how to wrestle properly, how to tell a story properly, and I don't know. I do worry about it. The idea of indie wrestling being cool in the UK or the progress is a really interesting kind of proposition. I don't know. There should be polar opposites to what the WWE is or what they put out, and yet they have a business relationship which makes sense, and it allows perhaps progress to prosper. And if you're in an industry to make money and survive, then I think you should perhaps make deals with everybody and whoever you can. But in the long term, if it's going to lead to you being run out of business or your fan base turning their back on you, it makes very little sense. So I'm somewhat worried about maybe the perception of professional wrestling in the UK, but not so much as to whether professional wrestling will survive in the UK, because it always has and it always will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I think Progress in particular has probably the most to show us in 2019. I think that personally, as a really big fan of Progress, they've lost kind of their key cornerstone talent, but I don't fear for them. I think that there are so many great talented guys and girls out there that I think they're going to do just fine. But I think that they have the farthest or the most to show us as a fan, just because they're losing so many at the end of this month. It's just it's going to take a hit for any company. But I think Progress is going to withstand, and they're going to be fine. They've got guys like TK Cooper, Chuck Mambo, Chris Ridgway, Drew Parker. There's so many great names coming up too. So I think the talent flow is going to be just fine. It might take a little bit of time for them to get back to their levels where they are now, but I think they're going to be great. The UK indie scene's really, really fun. Another scene that's really the best in the world is Japan, of course, which you focus on a lot. Noah has been really, really good and really entertaining for myself. I've been watching Pro Wrestling Noah a lot the past few months. And I wanted to know, what have you been watching recently? And if you have any time to kind of keep up with any other companies in Japan, what companies have you been watching, keeping tabs on? Have you been keeping up with Noah at all?
No. No. Honestly, I haven't been watching wrestling for the last month or so. Certainly not to the point where I'm fully attached to or associating myself with any storyline or any person or any individual. Just life has somewhat got in the way, and
It's not a bad thing.
I mean, so the wrestling that I am watching is historical wrestling. Really, I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of work on old Japan pro wrestling. So I've been watching a lot of old 90s old Japan, and when things are bad, that's what everyone should do. But yeah, things aren't bad. Like you're saying, Noah's been amazing this year, and from the little that I have seen, and so this picking out matches here and there. Noah's been great. DDT's been great. But the only thing that I'll genuinely sit down and watch if I've got an hour or 2 hours, it would be New Japan. So no, sorry.
No, that's fine. I'm just really impressed with what Noah's been doing this year. It's. I still wish they had a streaming service, but I mean, I'm really impressed with the wrestling they've had this year. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch them in 2019 with all the dark times that they've had and difficulties. I think things are really on the up and up, so I'm really excited for that. So if you're listening to this, definitely try to find some Noah Pro Wrestling. Follow people like Hisame on Twitter. Great resource for English translations. Yeah, she's awesome. So let me ask you. So if someone's listening to this, they haven't heard that we actually spoke about this a little bit last time. Tell us briefly about your early training days with Zack Sabre Jr. I know we touched on it previously, but it's always a great thing to touch base with. You actually trained with Zack Sabre Jr. And right now his style of wrestling is so unique yet so traditional, and I wanted to know if you thought that was an advantage to his overall sell, because it seems like it's definitely working for him.
Yeah, no, it definitely isn't. Say Zach this year. Certainly the first half of the year, his breakout and winning the New Japan Cup, it was fantastic. His matches, what he's done with Sanada this year, and going into Wrestle Kingdom against Ishii, I mean, I love their matches. But I think there is a certain danger, and again, going back to the British scene, where people maybe will just go onto YouTube real quick and watch a Johnny Saint match and try and say replicate that escapist style, which is particularly unique, which only he can do with, say, the style and elan that he has. And Zach's quite similar. He's got this very unique build. He's particularly gangly. He doesn't look like he should be able to hurt you, but you look at what he does in the ring, and everything is undeniably vicious and painful and unpleasant, and I think that's it. I mean, and that's what, again, professional wrestling is about. You don't need to be able to do the cartwheels and the flips and be Ibushi or Osprey, as remarkable as they are. I mean, but having a good grounding in being unpleasant, like Lancashire catch and twisting people's arms and dislocating people's elbows, and NWA Hammerlock, talking, kind of going right back to where we were about people who kind of stayed through the dark times and taught people how to put on a show, how to influence a crowd through the little things that you do, not through flashy entrances, not through pretending to be somebody or something that you're not, but through putting on a compelling contest of, say, psychological opposites or physical opposites, or just two equally balanced competitors. It's always going to be compelling if told right. And say Andre Baker, the guy who was in charge of NWA UK, the guy who trained Zack Sabre, and us and my trainer Magic, I know kept that alive, kept that style alive. The importance of being legitimate and presenting or portraying a believable wrestler, I suppose. I've run out of words. I'm sorry.
No, it sounds like you're being inundated by a lot of youth in the background there.
There are kids
Under siege?
outside. No, that's it. I'm sorry. I am somewhat under siege. Yeah. There's a scout group, and the adults don't know what to do with them, so they just let them run around in this square that I have outside my window. I'm sorry for the children.
Isn't that just like a small reflection on life? Don't know what to do, so they just let them run around.
Just let them run around. If they don't break anything, it's fine.
So something that is causing people a lot of strife, and actually we had an awards show on the last episode where I had a fan vote for best wrestler, best match, best event, all that stuff, and we had the best winner as Kenny, or the best wrestler as Kenny Omega, as voted on by people who listen. And the most overrated wrestler was also Kenny Omega, which I found fascinating. I wanted to ask you, who do you think's winning the main event at Tokyo Dome? And do you think that's good or bad if Kenny wins? I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think it'd be interesting. What do you think is going to happen in the main events? Do you have any... How do you feel about the main event? Do you have like a winner definitely in mind? Or are you still playing it open?
No, I think there's a good chance Kenny will win. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I don't want Kenny to win, because for me, going in, he's the heel. Yeah, I mean, if that exists in that dynamic that they have, I mean, he's the person I don't want to win. So for me, automatically, he's the bad guy. I mean, he's not. I mean, it's very cloudy as to what he is. But no, I mean, it's not a bad thing, because again, it gives them storytelling options going forward. People will possibly be unhappy if he does win, and of course, some people will be delighted. Mm-hmm. But there's such a, well, no, the story arc. I mean, we're used to sort of 3-act stories or 5-act stories or whatever. Where you start out and everything is okay. You have a bad period of time. You learn something new and you overcome it, and you come back and you win. And that, let's say last year, everyone wanted Naito to win because that followed that nice, neat arc perfectly, and he didn't. And so that confused people, and that bothered people. This year, of course, Tanahashi started out okay. He then took a hammering, and Suzuki hurt him, and he then came back, and he won the G1, and now he's going forward. And of course, it's sort of logical that, okay, so now you're going to reclaim your spot at the top of New Japan. But he doesn't have to, because these people are in themselves not stories. These are individuals, and we relate to the individuals going forward. They don't cease to exist when they win their big match or they lose their big match. So I don't know. There's possibilities for both men going forward to the future, going forward to, say, Madison Square Garden. Mm-hmm. It'd be interesting to see where Omega is within the company, or sort of in the world in general. I don't. If Tanahashi gets the belt, it would, I think, be more of a setup to then a true passing of the torch to somebody, because he's been such a representative for such a long time of the ace, and he, although he has kind of clawed back to being considered that, it's definitely time for somebody else to step up.
I think I feel the same. I'm rooting for Tanahashi. I'm 100% rooting for him, but I have this feeling that Kenny's going to hang on to it. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just a fan, so I don't know anything more than you guys listening, but I have a feeling that he's going to hang on to it, Kenny. And my prophecy is that Kenny actually would lose it on American soil, which would, I think, be ironic and a good story. And I think the real story of next year, personally, and I want your thoughts on this, is actually the redemption, the rise back to the top for Okada and Naito. I think that would be a beautiful story to be had. And I think the first couple months of the year will be Kenny eventually dropping it around MSG time. I think 2019 will be remembered for Okada and Naito making their way back to the top. Do you think that that's possible at all?
That's definitely possible. I mean, both of those men, Okada particularly, I mean, because he's been champion for such a very, very long time, you kind of forget how young he is and how many years he still has ahead of him. Naito as well, he's still a good few years off 40, and no, I mean, I absolutely think that's possible. Absolutely think that's possible. It's been an interesting year, and well, for Naito, I think a necessary year. I think he's been deliberately cooled off, so yeah, he can come back where the spotlight will be perhaps truly on him, totally on him, like you say, perhaps the focus on him and Okada. I'd like to see Ibushi in there as well.
And I'm going to go off track here and ask you, do you think that they put the Never title around Bushi's waist as just so Ospreay can kind of get fully fit? Or should we look into this a little more and say that maybe he's going to be more of a major player in 2019? Do you think that's a possibility from your point of view?
He definitely deserves to be. I mean,
absolutely.
If you look at what the Never title is supposed to represent, Ibushi is the perfect epitome of what the Never title should be. It's just no limits and everything, and their match, Ospreay and Ibushi, they're perfect for each other. And I can just see Ibushi having so much fun with Ospreay, because the possibilities are sort of endless physically. Anything you can think of, you can do with this man. And it's the thing, Ibushi is such a creative wrestler, such a brilliant wrestling mind, not just a wrestling mind, but a fighting mind too. I mean, he loves combat sports and he wants to incorporate that. I think he deserves to be at the top, and I think you make him your top babyface. He is the successor to Tanahashi, or he should be the true successor to Tanahashi. And you saw that story at the finals of the G1. He's definitely not out of place as your leading heavyweight champion.
I have this weird timeline that I would love to happen, is to see Kenny drop the belt to Ibushi at MSG. I think that would be I don't know how that plays into Gato's mind of booking, but I think that would be amazing to have Kenny and Ibushi at MSG. I think that would just blow the roof off the building.
Yeah.
So speaking of MSG and American soil and the elites and all these factors, if all elite wrestling, which is possibly an offshoot or a new brand of the elite guys, Cody, Young Bucks, Skrull, and all of them, if this becomes reality and we have a new brand in professional wrestling, what do you think it would take for it to be a success in 2019?
I don't know. Consistent shows, development of a brand that doesn't revolve around them, because the problem that they've had is that the somewhat inevitable backlash against anything that we once liked, it kind of hit them pretty hard, and they've come back to New Japan, or they've started reappearing over the last few weeks, and I think they're going into 2019 somewhat with a damaged brand. As popular as they still are, they're not kind of your cool punk band or your indie band on the cusp of success. They've somewhat broke through, and so as a result, I don't think people look at them the same. So I mean, for them to succeed, they need to shift the focus off of themselves and focus instead on who they're bringing into the brand and what that brand is then going to do to the new people who they are going to expose to perhaps a wider audience.
I think that's a great analogy you made, that they've kind of already broken out of their small bubble of being cool. They're kind of, to put it very plainly, is they've got mainstream success now, with All In really over exceeding their expectations. I think that because of how great they've been as a group and the lofty goals that they're setting, I think it's going to be interesting to watch, because I think that they've set these really high standards for themselves, which is going to be interesting to watch, to see if they can actually reach the heights that they now expect to, because this is a drastic change. I mean, they are basically sustaining a living away from WWE, possibly. And that's not something that's been done in a very, very long time. So they really are changing the game, and I'm fascinated to see if that works for them. I just want to say real quick hi to Darren, John, Courtney in the chat, or anybody else watching. Thanks for stopping by as always. You guys make plenty of cool points, and I'm glad you're enjoying the chats. Thank you guys for stopping by. I'm gonna throw a curveball your way. I asked you, I think, about hunky guys last time, and I want to say you said something about Jay White. Do you have have you ever had a crush on a pro wrestler? I personally was at the time when I was a teenager. Sonny was really, really like in your face in WWF early 90s, mid 90s. So Sonny was like my first crush as a very young, impressionable wrestling fan. Have you ever had a crush on anyone in particular, or just kind of your eyes twinkled when you saw them wrestle? There's a lot of fandom out there now that's really based on looks, and I don't know. What do you think? Do you ever have a crush?
There.
Yeah, there.
Well, going back in the day, I mean, Liter, I suppose, was kind of a crush. Bull Nakano, it was kind of a crush. But no, I mean, I'm trying to think. Lacey from Ring of Honor. No, I mean, I guess I've never, because pro wrestling is a medium for telling stories, and so why not romance, and that's part of storytelling. Is again, wrestling is whatever you want it to be.
Visual presentation is a huge part of
that's it. I'm trying to, honestly, no, I never. I think, again, because I got into it from a physical standpoint, or from a sporting standpoint, athletic standpoint. I've never really. Liter. I'd be lying if I didn't say Liter.
We've got Courtney talking about Switch Bay Jay White, which is clever. John is saying Hazuki from Stardom. Darren says Mia Yim he's a big fan of Mia Yim. So yeah, people are having their say, which is funny.
Okay, that's it. I mean, if you're looking at, say, modern day stuff, you can go through any of the promotions. At the moment, I'm doing something for, I'm doing a commission at Avid Rival versus Best Friends, So Tsukasa Fujimoto and Ohata and Nakajima and no, I mean
I am a huge mark for Nakajima. He's blown my mind lately, and he looks good doing it. So there's that.
I think that's a different Nakajima, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm thinking about Pro Wrestling Noah's. Okay, yeah, sorry, wrong Nakajima. So speaking about commissions, do you do commissions? Where can we reach out to you for doing a commission? I had a couple people ask me before we chatted today that they're inquiring about doing some commissions. Where can we direct those correspondents to?
Well, Twitter. I mean, my direct messages are open on Twitter, so just always drop me a line there. Instagram as well. I just moved into deeper into the 21st century. I just got the Instagram app. Before that, I was just using it as the website, but now it doesn't let you upload photographs unless you have the app. So now I have the app. That's exciting. And you can send messages that way, which I didn't know. So you can probably get me there as well. So
if you're watching this stream, I have his Twitter at Shining Wizard DS on the screen. And on Instagram, it's Shining Wizard Designs, so definitely give him a follow for some of the best artwork you'll ever see. Darren, thank you. Actually put the tag in the chat, too, so thank you for that, bud. So speaking of drawing, who are you going to be drawing in 2019? Anybody new? Anybody you have plans on drawing coming up on the turn of the year?
Well, I mean, tied very much in with the book project, you're going to be looking at pretty much complete New Japan, Dragon Gate, 01, Noah, an awful lot of people. I mean, I kind of worry that there's too much to do, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I mean, everyone. Same, just carry on with what I'm doing. 2019, just keep up with those people who are perhaps a little bit under the radar. Also, of course, making sure those people who achieve big things get the recognition they deserve. And no, I'm just looking forward to it. At the moment, I mean, wrestling, whoever you're into, whatever company you're watching at the moment, there's more global attention on professional wrestling, on Japanese professional wrestling certainly than there was, and however the thing with the Young Bucks goes, it's still got momentum. It's still something new. It's still people talking about wrestling, and I don't know. 2019 is going to be a good year.
The accessibility is something that I don't think we've ever had before, where you can literally just DM or send a message online, and you could directly correspond with the pro wrestler. It's a fascinating time. And then you also have all of these organizations on Pivot Share, or they have their own website for streaming. So it's just
exactly that.
It's mind blowing that I could watch a Stardom show just a couple days after it actually airs. It's a beautiful.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, I remember having to get the old Torimon Gym VHSs, 6 months, 7 months after, the shows happened. But now, the Dragon Gate Network, everyone should be watching Dragon Gate right now.
It's pretty amazing what Pac is doing. He's bringing on new eyes to the product, which I think is far better than I could have ever imagined. Anything he might have done in New Japan, I think that his move to Dragon Gate personally is brilliant. That's where his roots were in the past, and it's fantastic to get new eyes on a great product like Dragon Gate. So we have a Discord server, and friend Xavier asks a question. So he says, do you have any particular wrestler that you have trouble drawing? An example would be possibly Stan Hansen, like with the mustache. And what has been your favorite wrestling promotion this year other than New Japan? So, difficulty drawing anybody?
Yeah, no, a lot of people. Like, I just put up one actually today, Ricky Choshu. Hate drawing Ricky Choshu. he's very difficult to draw, and he shouldn't be, but he is difficult to draw, especially as he's kind of got older and his chin has disappeared into other chins, and no, he's a difficult guy to draw. Stan Hansen is a wonderfully easy person to draw because there's so many defining characteristics you can just pick on and exaggerate, or he's somebody that you can draw real quick. But it's other people with big pasty faces with nothing quite.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I want to ask you real quick because I've thought about this, but is it easier to draw somebody who is more stationary, or is it harder to draw a moving image, like an action shot?
I think it's definitely easier to draw somebody who's stationary, but action shots will always be more forgiving, because action shots are easier, I suppose, because the eye is drawn to not necessarily the accuracy, but instead on the general overall impression of movement and shadow, and it's just more enjoyable to look at. So I think definitely time provided, or if I had time, I'd do a lot more action pieces and a lot more large scale pieces, as opposed to portraiture. Definitely trying to move away from just being kind of portrait artist.
That's awesome, because when I see your action sketches, I swear I could see the images before and after. It's you really, really do a fantastic job of bringing me right into that moment of a certain match or a moment during a match. It's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It really, I feel like I'm right there watching it just in a simple sketch. It's brilliant what you do, man, honestly. I'm going to leave with this question that was actually a question on Twitter, put out to the world. I'm not sure if you saw it or not, but it's by a gentleman named Alex. At the Barry Potter is his Twitter handle. And I've been thinking about this since yesterday, and I'm still fascinated to think about it. So I want your thoughts. He says, who would you like to carry? And this wasn't directed to you. This was directed to, and we got a lot of Young Lion answers, surprisingly. Who would you like to carry on the Tiger Mask gimmick whenever Yamazaki eventually retires? Do you think it would be a high flyer, much like Tiger Mask, or somebody completely different? What's the first name or two that might pop into mind who could carry on the Tiger Mask legacy? I'll tell you, I picked one of the Young Lions, Yumura, because he's kind of a blank slate still. He's not progressed as far as Shota Umino or Rin Narita has lately, or Kawato, who's in Mexico right now. I picked Yumura because I think he was just he would be a fresh face. He's ripped, so whenever you have a mask on, you're kind of focused in on the physique. Yeah. And I think a Young Lion would be interesting, but then you would also have to kind of give him a really heavy duty push. I think. Well, no,
that's it. I mean, whoever takes the Tiger Mask is going to have to be somebody that you have an awful lot of faith in, because they're taking 30, 35, 40-year legacy. And people have certain expectations of what that would be. And you look at the people who've worn that mask. I mean, I think there's an awful lot of Tiger Masks now. Of course, you got Tiger Mask 4 in New Japan, but you've got Super Tiger, and I think a new Tiger Mask was introduced not that long ago. I can't remember who's under the mask.
Well, there was a Tiger Mask W, which we could say possibly was Ibushi for a little period of time. And then you had, of course, I think it was Black Tiger, which was Rocky Romero for a period of time. So there's been different...
But on the indies anyway, the original Tiger Mask came out and said, okay, now this is my disciple, and there is a new Tiger Mask somewhere on the indie scene, but not officially, or at least not in New Japan. So, the lineage now is muddy, and if you look at, say, the Black Tiger, there's 7 Black Tigers now, and it's again somewhat lost. Once you lose track of who's who and who's doing what, you somewhat lose interest in the character, and so whoever takes it for New Japan is going to have to be pushed to the moon. This is Tiger Mask. This is Tiger Mask 5. And so it would have to be someone, completely new. I like the idea of Kawato.
Yeah, I can't wait for Kawato to come back from Mexico. I've been really high on him right before he left. He has this fire about him that specifically the Cork and Hall was just absolutely behind right before he left, and I think Kawato's going to be a mega star. That's about it, man. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here, let you go. I appreciate you for drawing the sketch. That was touched my heart, so thank you. Thanks for all the kind words, of course. And I appreciate your time. Please follow Matt at Shining Wizard DS on Twitter, at Shining Wizard Designs on Instagram. Reach out to him. Let him know how he's doing. Reach out for him for a commission if you need something done. And thank you, Matt, for your time. I appreciate it.
No, absolute pleasure, man. Thank you again for having me.